So looking at the core principles, so some of the principles that we have for lean, very, very fundamental aspects of lean. So if you know this, if you're working on these, that means that you're actually trying to implement lean in your life, in your work, and in your business. So that's where we'll talk about each of them. So there's an aspect of amplification of learning. So you're trying to increase the learning, and not just increase it, actually kind of amplifying it multifold to make sure that you're actually learning not just about your product, about your customers and users, but about your own employees, about your team, about your the way you're developing the software, the processes, the products, everything. So the learning has to be continuous. And that's why these sessions, for example, that we've been having for the last 3 months, we are trying to actually encourage people to learn continuously, in an incremental way. If you actually look back about September time when we started this boot camps, we pretty much didn't know where we were going. We didn't know the foundation of what an agile is, what a BA is. But now, over the last 3 months, we've actually been adding a lot of these values, a lot of these different terminologies, the kind of the processes, the workflows, the practices, principles, challenges, all of these we're trying to understand within each of these methodologies. So amplification is definitely there. Now, the only thing that is important there is to make sure that you're actually applying this learning, making sure that you're actually understanding the nuances of these learning by applying and then by sharing with others. And then the other important principle within lean is that you should decide not as early, but as late as possible. So actually kind of defer. You do not decide right now. If it is something that needs to be done, for example, 5 months down, don't decide right now, because that's where, the agile thinking comes in. Agility is all about accepting change. It's all about how you're welcoming change and how you're not fighting with change. So, for example, what we're talking about in the strategic context is, now businesses used to actually think long term. The longer term thinking was about a good 5 years before. The 5-year plan was what used to be. And then slowly, if you really look at in the last few years, 5 years is like too longer term. Who has actually seen like next year? Who has seen tomorrow? That's what is important. Nobody has seen tomorrow. So why do you need to plan for 5 years down the line? We can never imagine what could happen within the next month. So the cycles have come down so quickly. They are crunching the cycles of these planning. So your strategic long-term planning has come down to, for example, 2-year window, and your tactical planning from there on came down to 6 months to 1 year. And then finally, your ops planning, the operational planning of how you're doing the work, is actually about weeks to months is what you're actually trying to look at. So you no longer have the visibility of that 5 years. And that's why it is important for us to decide things as late as possible, because we can then kind of understand what is contributing to the change of direction, if any, and we can correct our course quickly instead of taking a long time, because here it's all about lean. For example, if you have got a boat which has got 50 people, it's a huge cruise ship, for example, like Titanic, and Titanic is there. And then if you want to change the course correction, if you want to change that from the iceberg, they actually, for example, they noted that iceberg, and they wanted to change the course of Titanic from there. So no matter how much they tried to change that with the captain and the rest of the crew, they could not change it because it's a huge ship. It's a huge cruiser. So the cruise liner could not be changed because of the massive size of it. And to change the direction, even for a slight, just a few degrees of angle, is taking so much of effort, time, and cost, right? So just imagine the same with a canoe. I think some of you must be doing kayaking. You would have done kayaking. I did that last summer, not this year though. So the kayak is very lean, slim, and you are just only yourself. You can sit within the kayak, and it's easy to manipulate and maneuver. So the way you change the direction with a kayak is perhaps just a twist you've got only that one paddle. And with that one twist of that, you actually can change that. And the other one is, if you want to go straight, you just keep going. But then if you want to change the direction on one way, just flip the paddle and then keep direction this way. Then you will turn left. And the same with, if you want to turn right, flip the paddle and then do a couple of paddles here this way, and then you'll go right. So it's so easy with a kayak, to change the direction, to change course of your kayak. than compared to, let's say, a huge battleship or a luxury cruiser, right? So what does that say? That says that, well, these two are serving different purposes. I'm not trying to compare my kayak with Titanic. That's a different ballgame altogether. But what is important there to understand is that we can take a decision quicker with a kayak because the amount of effort required to change or accept change and react is quicker with this than compared to a Titanic. So it's a common sense. I don't have to explain further. It's common sense, right? So with that context, when you try and work in lean teams, you can afford to actually defer and take decisions till the last minute because you're lean. You don't have the fat. You don't have to spend so much of effort, time, and money to change your course correction or to take a decision which is different from what you're doing. So that in a sense is the fundamental spirit of lean. Very, very important.